Okay, so now we're going to cover the file directory. So you can see the file directory. So what is a file directory? So basically, the way files are stored on your computer is in this tree-like structure. So every single folder that is on your computer, every single file that is on your computer lives within this tree structure. So this is just an example tree structure of someone else's computer. So this one will not match your computer. It will not match my computer. But hopefully this gets an idea of what exactly we mean by a tree. So the top of the tree is called the root of the tree. And so this is the top level of the file directory. And this is designated by this slash right here, this backslash right here. So if we ever wanted to reach the root of our file directory, we can simply do cd, and then if we add this backslash, this gets us to the root. So you notice that this tilde, which stands for the home directory, now has changed to this backslash, which stands for the root directory. So within this root directory is going to be other folders and files. And so if we list this, we see that there's all sorts of different folders and files. So the blue indicates the folders. So all of these are folders. And then the pink indicates what's called symbolic links or shortcuts. So you're probably more familiar from a GUI system of shortcuts. But these are shortcuts to something. So if you ever want to see what the symbolic link refers to, so this is basically what it refers to. So this etc. Link actually points to a folder in the private directory. So you notice that there's a private directory. So this would be the same as going to this, and you would see the files are the same. So we're in the root, and so we see that there's all sorts of different folders within this root. So this is the top level of the directory, and you can also see this by using your finder. So your finder, for example, contains your finder is your graphical way of interacting with the file directory. So you might have shortcuts, your desktop, and so this is kind of, you go, this favorite link takes me to the desktop. You can also, if you don't have this link, you can use the Go menu, and then there's the option to go to the desktop this way. And in the setup instructions, I kind of talk about how you add these to your favorites. You probably want to have the desktop as one of your favorites if it's not already in there. And you can see that within this, you can see the immediate files and directories that are within this one right here. So if we wanted to see the root in this graphical way, typically you cannot do that using one of these shortcuts. These shortcuts typically are not there. But if you go to the computer shortcut right here, this is, you can find the root directory right here, and that's called the Macintosh HG. So this is actually the same as root right here. So again, we went to Go, and then we went to Computer. And so there's this network feature, which kind of is how your computer stores all the computers on the same network. And then this is your local computer right here. So if we click on Macintosh HD, this is the same as the root. So this is a graphical way to see the root. And so you'll notice applications, for example, is shown here. So we can see that here. Library is shown there. System here. And then users is shown here. But you notice that there's a large number of directories that are shown on the command line interface that are not shown here. And that is actually because these are typically hidden from you. So the graphical user interface assumes that you're not a very sophisticated user, computer user, and so they want to hide all of the directories that if you mess with, you can really mess up your computer. So you don't want to modify the majority of these folders because these are necessary for the function of your computer. But you can see them if you want to by hitting Shift Open Apple period. So you can switch back and forth showing all of the files or not by using Shift Open Apple period. So now we can see, okay, there is a bin directory. So now there's a bin directory right here, cores here. We can see there's a cores here. So now we see a one-to-one correspondence. So we can see this either using the GUI to see all of the different file structures, or we can use this at the command line. So now if we click on this bin folder, we see there's all sorts of different commands within here. So the way the computer shows these commands is kind of with this icon right here. But if we cd into bin, we see that there's all of these different kind of orange things that you can run. So these are a lot of remove, ls. So a lot of those commands that we run are actually kind of built into this folder right here, this bin folder. And we'll see these bin folders all the time. So these are what contains programs or executables. But if we go back, we can see, let's go to the opt. And so again, we see that there are 4 directories. So the way the command line now shows these directories is in blue. So there's 5 different directories within here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's kind of a one-to-one correspondence between the graphical interface and the command line interface. One more time, we can go to like the USR, and again we see kind of this correspondence between these. So this icon shows that this is like a symbolic link. This shows it in pink, and then all of these directories are kind of the same. So if you are on a laptop, most likely you have the only login into it. But if you ever use a desktop that's in a lab setting, hopefully you have used kind of like these computers that are available for multiple users before. So typically what you do is you log into a computer and then it kind of loads your local account. So how does that work? Well, there's actually a file called users, and then all of the local information for the users is stored within here. So if I go to this users directory, I see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different folders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the shared indicates some of the files that are shared between all of the users. Typically there's a root. So this is kind of like the highest level user that has like the rights to kind of do anything. So typically you never want to log in to the root account because you can mess up your computer that way. I have my primary account that I use to control this computer from, called just my username, my Georgia Tech username. And then for this class, I created a specific user account so that we can kind of go through the installation of all these things kind of at the same time. The IT guy, if he needs to access his computer, he has his own account either through his personal username, or there's like a general bio admin. And so this is just a way for administrators to, if I screw something up, the administrators can log in and kind of fix the computer that way. Each user will have kind of its own, so depending on what you install, so you can see like I have installed all sorts of different programs. So I have a bash shell that I use. So there's all these configuration files for bash. I've installed Anaconda, I've installed Dropbox, I've installed this program called Emacs, kind of all these different programs that I've installed over the past 5 years, Matplot, lib, MATLAB, Perl, etc. All these configuration files kind of live within my home directory. Whereas this Python class that I just created has a lot less of those kind of configuration files because I haven't installed a lot of things so far. But each user has a desktop, so the way that your computer knows what to show on the desktop when you log in is it's each user has its own desktop folder that contains that information, and then each user would have its own downloads, documents, Dropbox account linked to it, etc. And so this is kind of the way that the computer knows how to show which files when different people are logged on. So, for your computer, I encourage you to, really get used to, this feature going to them, being able to go back and forth between the GUI interface and then the command line interface to kind of see, how you can navigate the file system using both kind of ways. So, you always have a location in this Finder. Currently I'm in the library directory, and it kind of shows here where exactly I am. And then, on this command line, you're also in a current location at any time. And so that's kind of the idea of what it means to be what your current directory is. There's kind of like a one-to-one correspondence between the Finder window and then the CLI, the command line interface for this stuff. So again, if you ever want to go to root, you just use the /. If you ever want to go to your home directory, you use the tilde. You could also, for example, so if you want to print the exact location of this, this is the location of my home directory is given here. So I can also go to root, and then I can change directory into users, and then I can change directory into this folder, and this is the same location as my home directory. So the home directory is just a shortcut location for this absolute path starting from here. And then as you go from directory to directory, you notice that the prompt will change to kind of tell you where you are. So if I look at this, I know I'm in the pictures folder. And then within this picture folder is a directory called this. And if I wanted to go into there, I can simply do this. And now I'm in the photos directory. So one of the things that is you'll notice is that in order to access this directory, I had to use this / right here. And that might seem strange to you. But the way the ZSH or the bash shell, if you write out a, so the name of this folder actually has a space within it. So if you simply try to change directory into it like this, you get an error. And the reason you get an error is because the parser takes spaces as a way to break up what your commands are into different arguments. So the way it would read this, it would say, okay, change directory is the name of the command I want to run, and then the first thing, photos, is the name of is an argument that I provided to it, and then the second word is the second argument. So it would give photos and library.photos.library to the cd command, and that's what the cd command is trying to do. So what it's trying to do is essentially change into a folder called photos, and there's no such file or directory in that. So if you ever have a folder with a space in the name, if the name of the folder has a space in it, you have to get used to using this /. And so the / just says the space is part of the name. So when you write this all out, it says send this entire thing as the first argument to the cd command. And then now I can go into this folder. So it's a very common mistake that students make where they name something. Maybe they try to name so let's go back to our home directory, and it's like, all right, make a file called Python class. And so you see I made a folder called Python, and I made something called class. And so that's because it takes the space and it sends two different arguments to the make directory. And so make directory makes a Python directory and a class directory. And if I wanted to make something called Python class, basically I have to send the / to tell it that the space is not something that's breaking up the arguments, but it's actually a single name. And so now if I want to remove, I'm just going to go out and clean it all up. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense about what the file directory is and how you can access it both through the Finder, or you can also access it through the command line, and you should be comfortable being able to find any sort of file that way. And so, print working directory is always PWD is always a useful command to basically find where exactly I'm at. So no matter where you are in your file directory, you should always be able to find pwd, run pwd, and then you know exactly how to get to the folder that you're in. So you'd simply go to the root. So again, we go to Microsoft HD, we go to users, we go to Python class, and now we're within that same directory. All right, so if we see this, we see all of these things. There's also a bunch of hidden files, but now if we do that, we see all of the, so if we add the -LA flags, now we see all of the different hidden files as well. So I have been using kind of a couple features. I've used Linux so much that this is just kind of ingrained in me to use these. But there's a number of shortcuts that you should be used to. So tab is really useful as a way to automatically complete what you're writing. So you notice that I start writing, so if I want to get into this library directory, you notice I start CD and I start writing LI, the first two letters of it, and then if I hit tab, it's able to automatically complete these. So the only directory within this folder that starts with an L and an I is library, and so it's able to automatically complete that. So that makes it a lot easier this autocomplete feature makes it a lot easier to type. You don't have to type quite so many letters, which the more you get used to that, the better. You can also use the up arrow. So the up arrow is a way to go through your previous commands. So if you want to rerun a command that you ran before and you don't want to type it all out, you'll get used to just going up until you find what you want. You can also search. So the OhmyZSH includes this feature to filter your history. So if I know I want to change directory, but I want to look up in my previous commands to only the things that I changed directory. So you notice if I go up, there's an ls command, there's a change directory, there's all these different things that I ran. But if I want to just filter it to the change directory, I start to print out CD, and then I only see the previous commands that I run that started with a CD. So if you are not using OhmyZSH, if you're using Bash, for example, if you add this to your configuration file, your bashrc or your bash profile, this right here, that's the way to customize your shell to also allow that. So this is a very useful thing that I recommend you getting used to. One of the things you'll notice is that if you're used to, so let's say I make a mistake. So let's say I want to go to this, say I want to list this file. Okay. And as I'm typing it, I accidentally mistyped something. So, I try to go there and I put this extra 1 within there. And so let's say I want to delete that 1. So one way you can do it is you just hit the L. So we hit up in order to get to the previous command, and then we hit left until we reach the point where the 1 is, and then we delete it. So that's one way to do it. But you end up waiting around a lot. You can end up waiting a long time to go back. So one way to go back is you can also use Control A, and so Control A goes all the way back to the start of the line. So let's say instead of, so let's say I printed it right, I did the more command, but I was like, or so let's say I did it like this. I used the wrong command. So I used the ls command. I was like, oh, I didn't want to use the ls command. I wanted to use more. And so a way to get back to the start very easily is you use this Control A, and then that takes the cursor back to the start, and then I can modify it. And then Control E takes you to the end. So Control A and E are kind of two of the first sugars that you can add in order to go back and forth very easily on the line. Because you'll notice if you click on it, you can't click and change the cursor by just clicking on the location. You can actually use the mouse though if you hold the Option key, so that's another thing that's useful to get used to. So if you hold the Option key, then you can find exactly where you want it and click exactly where you want if you just wanted to modify it starting from here, for example. So the up arrow, the tab, Control A and Control E, Option click, those are all really useful things to first learn. And then one final thing is the asterisk. So this is a wildcard character. So, let's say I wanted to list all of the things that started with D. So if I just type ls capital D, it looks for any sort of directories that are just called D. But I want to list anything that just starts with a D. And so if I add this asterisk, then now I can recognize desktop, documents, downloads, and Dropbox. So how did that work? So the way the asterisks work, it just says start with a capital D, but then anything else after that can be whatever it wants to. So it just matches anything after that. So it matched desktop, documents, downloads, Dropbox. So it recognized all of those because the wildcard basically matches anything and everything. So the wildcard character can also be a very useful shorthand in order to autocomplete something, for example. So let's say I make a bunch of directories. What's another example of this being useful? So I accidentally make all these temp directories, and I'm like, okay, I want to delete everything that, all of these temp directories. So I don't want to have to type these all separately. So what I can do is if I do the remove command, I add the R flag because it's a directory, and then temp, and then I add the star, anything that matches this. So temp would match it, temp2 would match it, temp3 would match it, and temp4 would match it. And so now I've deleted all of those temp file directories with a single line. You can also use this. So let's say I have a bunch of text files. Let's say I wanted to just list all of the text files in the directory. I can now just do ls star.text. And so now it says, as long as it ends with .text, it doesn't matter with what comes before it. And so now I've managed to match 1, 2, 3, 4. And so now, for example, I could remove these. So if I want it, so there we go. And so now I've removed all of those text files right there. So that gives you an overview of kind of the file directory and how you navigate it, and some of the shortcuts that we commonly use.